All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something super interesting. We're talking device identity.
Ooh, interesting.
And we're going to be exploring a company called Smallstep and how they are, well, they're kind of shaking things up, especially for companies that are already using Okta.
Okay.
So to guide us today, we've got some articles and official documentation from Smallstep and Okta.
Great.
Get ready, folks, because we're about to learn how to really lock down your most sensitive data using something that you already have, and that's the silicon in your devices.
It is pretty crazy how much things have changed, you know?
Yeah.
Used to be all about passwords and tokens for security, but, things are changing. They're becoming more vulnerable.
Right.
Device identity, it's a whole new layer of protection, and it's so important now.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break this down a little bit. What exactly is device identity, and why is it so important, especially now?
Sure. So in the simplest terms, device identity is kind of like verifying the ID of a device. That's trying to access your company's network or sensitive data, right? We're not just trusting a username and password anymore.
Got it.
We want to make sure that the device itself is authorized.
Okay.
It's like an extra layer of security right at the device level.
So it's not just about who you are, but it's also about what device you're using.
Exactly. And that's where Smallstep comes in.
Okay.
They're using some pretty cool cryptography to create a unique ID tied to a device's silicon.
Whoa. Okay.
Think of it like a fingerprint for your device.
Oh, cool.
It's unique and impossible to fake.
Hold on. A fingerprint for my device? That's way cooler than a password.
I know, right?
So does this mean that if someone stole my work laptop, they wouldn't be able to access anything?
You got it. That's what's so great about Smallstep.
Wow.
They focus on organizational security, meaning even if a device is lost or stolen, the company's data, it's going to stay protected.
Okay, this is pretty mind-blowing. I've heard of like YubiKeys for security. Is this kind of similar?
Yeah, I guess you could say it's similar. It's similar because it adds that extra layer of security. But Smallstep, they're taking it a step further.
Okay.
You see, YubiKeys are great for personal security, but they can be lost or stolen, right?
Yeah.
Smallstep's all about making sure that company data stays locked down to specific company-controlled devices. They even worked with Apple and Google to make this the new standard.
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Working with Apple and Google, that's impressive.
I know, right?
This is starting to sound like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right?
But how does this actually work with a system like Okta? Because a lot of companies, they use Okta already.
Great question.
Yeah.
Smallstep actually integrates with Okta seamlessly by acting as an external identity provider.
Okay.
It uses something called OpenID Connect, or OIDC,
Okay.
and Skim for syncing users and groups between the two systems, so it's really smooth.
So it just like adds a hidden device check to the Okta login process.
Yeah, think of it like that.
So Smallstep's like a VIP bouncer for my company's data.
Huh, yeah, you could say that.
Like if the device isn't on the list, it doesn't get in,
You got it.
no matter what.
No matter what, that's right.
Wow.
And the best part is that for users on authorized devices, they don't even notice anything different. They log in just like usual.
Oh.
But behind the scenes, Smallstep is verifying their device, adding that extra layer of protection without any extra hassle.
That's great. So it's all happening like invisibly.
Yeah.
That's great for users, I bet.
You know, a lot of people think that all this extra security would make things really complicated. But with Smallstep, it's really the opposite. It's super smooth.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know it was there.
So no extra login steps, no fiddling with tokens. It just works.
Exactly. It's all automatic.
Wow. So Smallstep is working behind the scenes to keep everything safe.
It is.
This device check, I'm really curious to learn more about how that actually works.
So Smallstep uses something called Acme device attestation. Basically, the device has to prove its identity to Smallstep.
Okay.
And this involves sending a cryptographic proof from the device.
Oh, wow.
This proof is generated using a unique key that's embedded in the device's hardware, usually in something called the Trusted Platform Module, or TPM. So it's kind of like your device is presenting its unique silicon fingerprint as its ID card.
And this fingerprint is unique to each device and it's tamper-proof, right?
Exactly. And Smallstep will have registered this fingerprint during the device onboarding process.
Okay.
So it can verify its authenticity.
So only devices with the correct hardware fingerprint can actually get in.
That's right.
This is really impressive stuff. They combine all these different technologies to create a system that's secure, efficient, and user-friendly.
It is pretty cool.
You mentioned earlier that Smallstep could actually replace Okta's adaptive MFA in some cases.
Yeah.
That's a bold claim. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means and how it's even possible?
So adaptive MFA from Okta, it's a really great security feature, but it often relies on things like push notifications or one-time codes.
Right.
And let's be honest, they can be a bit inconvenient for users, right?
Yeah, I get it.
But Smallstep's approach, it can be so secure that in some cases, it can actually be enough to replace those extra steps.
Oh, wow.
So logging in is smoother while still being incredibly secure.
So it streamlines the login process,
Hmm?
but it's actually even more secure than using those traditional MFA methods.
They can be, yeah.
This is wild. You said it's even more secure than a YubiKey, but couldn't someone theoretically steal a device to get around all this?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
But you have to remember that stealing a device is a much more difficult task than just stealing, credentials or a physical token.
that's true.
Plus, a lot of organizations have additional security measures in place,
Like what?
like device encryption
Oh, right.
and remote wipe capabilities.
Right, right.
So even if a device was stolen, the data would still be protected.
So it's all about layering those security measures for the best defense.
Absolutely, you got it.
And it sounds like this cryptographic ID, that's really central to how Smallstep works. Can you explain a little bit about why cryptography makes this system so secure?
So cryptographic IDs, you can think of them as incredibly complex mathematical problems.
Okay.
They can be easily verified, but they're practically impossible to fake.
Okay.
And that's what makes Smallstep so robust against attacks that try to spoof or imitate devices.
So it's like a super secure digital signature for my device that's basically impossible to forge.
You got it.
That's a really clever way to make sure that only authorized devices can get in.
It is. And what's even better is that this integration doesn't require any complex configurations or additional steps for the end user. It just happens automatically in the background.
So Smallstep isn't just for huge companies then. I can see how this could be useful for, all sorts of things,
Yeah, you're right.
like accessing sensitive files, logging into secure systems, even just protecting my own personal data.
Exactly.
This could be huge for, everyone.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just for enterprises. They have solutions for everything, like
Yeah.
SSH access, network encryption.
Right.
It's all about using the power of your device's hardware to make the digital world a little safer.
That makes a lot of sense. Before we move on, I wanted to ask you about how all of this ties back to real-world security breaches.
Sure.
I remember reading about the Snowflake incident from back in June of 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Could something like Smallstep have helped prevent something like that from happening?
Absolutely.
Really?
That incident really highlighted how even the strongest security systems can be vulnerable if someone manages to get access to a device with valid credentials.
Right.
You see, Smallstep would have added that extra layer of protection, ensuring that even if someone stole credentials, they still wouldn't be able to get to the data because the device wouldn't be authorized.
Wow.
So it's like having a gatekeeper that verifies both the user and the device before granting access to anything sensitive.
That's huge. This could be a game changer for a lot of companies.
Okay. I think so. I mean, in today's world, data breaches are becoming way more common, right?
Right.
So adding this extra layer of protection, it's really essential for any company that takes security seriously.
Yeah.
And what I love about Smallstep is that it does all this without impacting user experience.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. So it's not just about checking boxes for compliance now. It's about having confidence that your data is truly safe,
That's right.
even with all these cyber threats that are out there.
A device identity isn't just a trend, it's a fundamental shift in how we think about security.
It's about trust and confidence in the digital world, right?
Exactly. And with Smallstep, we're actually seeing that shift happen in a really powerful way.
Before we move on to the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to quickly recap the key takeaways.
Yeah.
So first, device identity. It's a crucial layer of security, especially now that those traditional methods they're just not cutting it anymore.
That's right. It's not just about who you are, it's also about the device you're using.
Right, exactly. And second, Smallstep offers a really seamless way to integrate this security layer into an existing Okta setup,
Yeah.
boosting security without disrupting the user experience.
And finally, device identity. This is way more than just a trend. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about security in this crazy digital world we live in.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part.
We have.
Let's take a quick pause. And when we come back, We'll explore how Smallstep's technology works at a much deeper level.
Sounds good.
And we'll talk about what this all means for the future of online security.
Can't wait. Welcome back. So we've talked about what device identity is and how Smallstep integrates it into Okta, but let's get a bit more technical.
Yeah.
Let's kind of unpack the magic behind this integration.
Okay, so we're lifting the hood and seeing what's going on under there.
Exactly.
Earlier you mentioned OpenID Connect at Skim.
Right.
Those sound pretty techy.
They are a bit technical,
Yeah.
but they're really the backbone of this whole thing.
What role do they actually play in all of this?
So OpenID Connect, or OIDC as it's often called,
Okay.
it's basically a way for Smallstep to securely verify the identity of someone trying to access resources that are protected by Okta.
Okay.
It's like a digital handshake that confirms that the user is who they say they are.
Okay, so OIDC is like the initial introduction, verifying who's knocking on the door.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But what about managing all the user data between Smallstep and Okta? That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It could be, but that's where SCIM comes in.
Skim.
Yeah, it stands for System for Cross-Domain Identity Management.
Okay.
But don't worry about the jargon.
Okay.
What it does is actually pretty amazing.
Right.
It basically automates the entire process of creating, updating, and removing user accounts in both systems.
Okay, so every time a new employee joins the company and they get added to Okta, Skim just automatically does the same thing in Smallstep.
Yeah, exactly, and vice versa. If an employee leaves the company and their Okta account is deactivated, their Smallstep account is automatically taken care of as well.
So Skim just keeps everything in sync without anyone having to manually update two different systems.
That's exactly it.
That's got to be a huge time saver for IT teams, especially in bigger organizations.
You got it. It streamlines the entire user management process and ensures that both systems always have the most up-to-date information.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got OIDC handling authentication and Skim keeping the user data sync up. But how does Smallstep actually verify the device itself? I'm still a little fuzzy on this whole device attestation thing.
Right. So device attestation, that's really the heart of how Smallstep works.
Okay.
It's how a device proves its identity. And it involves a cryptographic proof that's sent from the device.
Okay.
And this proof, it's generated using a unique key that's embedded in the device's hardware.
Wow.
Usually it's in something called the Trusted Platform Module, or TPM.
Okay, so it's kind of like my device is presenting its unique silicon fingerprint as a form of ID, and this fingerprint's unique to each device, and it can't be tampered with, right?
You got it. And since Smallstep already registered this fingerprint during the device onboarding process, it can easily verify that it's authentic.
Okay.
That way, only devices with the correct hardware fingerprint are actually allowed in.
This is seriously impressive. They've managed to combine all these different technologies and create a system that's not only secure, but also efficient and user-friendly.
Yeah, it's pretty elegant, isn't it?
It really is.
And the best part is that all this happens in the background, so the end user, they don't even realize all these security checks are happening.
Right.
So it's seamless security, which is what everyone wants, right?
Seamless security, that's the dream. We talked before about how Smallstep could even replace Okta's adaptive MFA in some cases.
Right.
What makes that possible?
So adaptive MFA from Okta, it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic security feature.
Yeah.
But it can be a little inconvenient for users sometimes because it often involves, those extra steps.
Like the push notifications and one-time codes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those can get a little annoying.
I get it.
But Smallstep's device attestation, it can be so strong that in certain situations, it alone provides enough assurance that you don't need those extra MFA steps.
So it streamlines the login process, but it's still maintaining or even exceeding the security level of those traditional MFA methods.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really impressive.
It's about finding that sweet spot between security and a smooth user experience.
I see.
Making sure it's secure, but also easy for people to use.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the benefits of Smallstep. Are there any limitations or potential downsides we should be aware of?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that while Smallstep is a powerful tool, it's not a magic solution that's going to solve all your security problems.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all in security, right?
Right.
Organizations still need to implement other best practices, like strong passwords, regular security awareness training,
Right.
and of course, data encryption.
Right.
Smallstep is a fantastic addition to a comprehensive security strategy, but it's not a replacement for one.
Right. It's all about layering those security measures for the strongest defense.
Exactly. Smallstep is a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it's not the entire picture.
That makes sense. Another question I had was about compatibility. Does Smallstep work with, all types of devices and operating systems?
That's a great question.
What if a company uses a mix of Windows, Macs, and mobile devices?
That's a very practical consideration, and luckily, Smallstep supports a really wide range of platforms,
Oh, okay.
including Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android.
Okay, good.
They're always working on expanding their compatibility to cover as many devices as possible.
Okay.
But of course, it's always best to check their documentation for specific system requirements.
Right, to make sure everything's going to work smoothly. So they've got pretty comprehensive device support, which is great for companies that have a mix of different devices.
Yeah, it is.
I imagine implementing a system like this across a whole organization, though, could be pretty complex.
It can be, especially for larger organizations with lots of devices.
Right.
But Smallstep offers a ton of resources and support services to help with the implementation process.
Okay.
They also have different deployment options,
Okay.
so companies can start small and gradually expand coverage as needed.
So it's not an all or nothing approach. You can tailor it to your needs.
Exactly, you got it.
That's good.
It's about finding what works best for your specific organization.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the cost. Is this only for big companies with lots of money, or can smaller companies benefit from Smallstep too?
That's an important question, and Smallstep gets that. They know that companies come in all shapes and sizes.
Right.
So they offer different pricing plans to fit different budgets,
Oh, yeah.
from startups to those big enterprises.
So there's an option for everyone.
That's the goal.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit. You mentioned earlier that device identity could be the future of online security.
Yeah.
What do you think that future actually looks like?
Well, imagine a world where you don't have to remember all those complicated passwords
Oh, that'd be great.
or deal with annoying MFA prompts.
Right.
Your device becomes the key, granting you access seamlessly and securely.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, right.
No more password fatigue or fumbling with authentication apps.
Exactly.
That would make online interactions so much smoother and more secure.
For sure.
But is that really a realistic vision for the future?
I think it has the potential to be, we're already seeing a shift towards hardware-backed security features and devices from companies like Apple and Google.
Yeah, that's true.
And with companies like Smallstep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with device identity, I think we're on the verge of a major change in online security.
Okay, but let's be real. Every new technology comes with its own challenges. What are some of the hurdles that need to be overcome for device identity to really become the mainstream standard for online security?
You're absolutely right. There are definitely challenges, and one of the biggest is standardization.
Okay.
Right now, there are all these different approaches and technologies being developed which can cause compatibility issues.
So we need everyone on the same page, speaking the same language when it comes to device identity.
Exactly. We need clear standards and protocols that ensure interoperability between all these different devices and systems.
Right.
Another challenge is making sure that privacy is protected.
Yeah, that's important.
As we start relying more on our devices for authentication, we need to be extra careful about how personal data is handled.
So that balance between security and privacy is going to be crucial as we move toward this future of device-centric security.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But despite those challenges, I'm optimistic.
Okay.
The potential benefits of device identity are huge, Increased security, a better user experience, and a more trustworthy digital environment. It's a future worth fighting for.
I'm inclined to agree. We've seen how technology can change the way we live and work.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, device identity is the next step in making our digital lives both safer and more convenient.
I think it could be.
This has been a fascinating look into the technical side of Smallstep and really the potential of device identity for the future of online security. We've talked about everything from how Smallstep works with Okta to the bigger implications of this technology for the digital world.
We have covered a lot.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll share our final thoughts and wrap up this deep dive. Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into device identity and the future of online security. It's been a wild ride. We've learned so much about how Smallstep is, well, it's really changing the game, especially for Okta users. But I'm curious, for you, what's the biggest takeaway here? What should our listeners really be thinking about?
I think the key takeaway here is that device identity, it's not just some futuristic concept. It's here, it's real, it's incredibly powerful, and it's already changing how we approach security.
It's about moving beyond those those passwords and tokens, to
Exactly.
something way more secure and connected to the devices we use every day.
That's it. And with Smallstep, companies can actually start using this technology right now. They
Right.
can integrate it with their Okta systems pretty seamlessly, I might add.
So for our listeners out there who are already using Okta, what advice would you give them about taking that next step with device identity?
That's a great question. I'd say start by thinking about which applications or resources are the most critical to your organization, the ones that would be, well, the most damaging if compromised, you know?
Okay, so pinpoint the crown jewels.
Yeah, the assets that need that highest level of security.
That makes sense.
And what's great about Small Step is that it gives you so much control. You can choose which Okta apps need this extra device identity layer.
Right.
So you can start small and then gradually expand coverage as you need to.
So it's not all or nothing?
Exactly. It's all about strategy. You tailor it to your organization's security needs and your risk tolerance.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. Okay, what if device identity becomes so common, so expected,
Yeah.
that it's just the standard way of accessing sensitive information online?
Whoa. That's a big thought.
It is. It would fundamentally change how we think about online security, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. It'd be a whole new world. Instead of relying on things we know, like passwords,
Hmm.
we'd be using things we have, our devices, as part of our digital identity.
It's like our devices become these trusted extensions of ourselves in the online world.
Exactly. And that shift, I think it could lead to a new era of security and trust online, making the internet a safer place for everyone.
That's an incredible vision. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for our deep dive today into device identity and the power of small step. We hope you found this exploration as eye-opening as we did.
And if this got you thinking about the possibilities, I encourage you to check out Small Step's website.
Yeah, they have tons of great resources to get you started.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
See you next time.
Until then, stay curious and stay safe.